So now I want to talk about how you ended up moving to the Valley. I know there were a lot of things that went on around that, I think, 2014 time period, but can you tell me a little bit about that story and how that ended up happening for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in banking, I saw that tech was taking over all of the finance industry with my co-founders. My co-founders that were in Atlanta and with me. One of them, his name's Archer Meister. He he has a twin brother who was an auto trader at the time. None of us knew how to code, but one of our buddies at SunTrust, his name's Adam Waxman. He quit his job and became an investment banker. I no, he became a software engineer 3 months later. When we were like, how did he do that? And he did a boot camp called Flatiron School, and ended up at a company called SeatGeek. Um, and we were like, man, what's this boot camp thing? That's pretty interesting. And he was also in the same cohort as this guy named Jack Altman, who's Sam Altman's brother from Y Combinator and OpenAI and all these things. And so he was also an investment banker before too. Jack was, and he became an engineer, and that's how we discovered Y Combinator. We're like, first of all, what's boot camps? What's Y Combinator? Like when you're in the valley, like everybody knows Y Combinator. But even today, like most people in the world don't know what Y Combinator is, even though they created 300 billion in value over the last few years. Like it's crazy how many people don't know what Y Combinator is. Most people in Career Karma don't know what Y Combinator is. Um, and when we learned about Y Combinator, we knew we wanted to start a company. Something that they said is, if you want to build a big company, you need to write code and talk to users. And none of us knew how to code, so who's going to be the coding person, you know? And Archer and Timor, they had done some coding classes, and so they decided to be the software engineers. So they did boot camps, and then I was going to be the talk to users, raise money guy, CEO type guy. So while they were coding, I bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco. I had a place to live for a month, and 3 weeks later, I found a job. And I wrote a story about it called Breaking into Startups. And then when they were done with their boot camps and they got a job, while they were in their boot camp, they crashed on my couch, and then then we eventually split up. Got a wrote a story called The Reality of Breaking into Startups. The first product you build is yourself. And both of those stories blew up. And we wanted to work for 3 years before coming back together, similar to like how you would in investment banking. And then we came back together to create Career Karma. But before we created Career Karma, we launched the podcast after the blog because we realized that people didn't read anymore and they needed to listen to these stories. So we started the podcast, and then that was also paying homage to my radio roots. And Arch and Timor, they were thinking about starting a podcast called Coding Crusaders, but then it ended up being us bringing our ideas together and making it breaking into startups. And then that led to, the world starting to change and focus on skills training and talking about the future of work. And then there was nobody in the world that knew more about the space than us. And then the schools already work with us because not only were we talking about it, but we've lived this life, and nobody's lived this life like we've lived this life. And so who better than us than to create the category king of the rapid reskilling movement, which is Career Karma. And here we are serving people, focused on helping 1 billion people in the next 10 years.